Okay, so in the last episode, I built up this kind of race bike that I've got here behind me, and I chose to install an electronic group set from a Chinese manufacturer called L-TWOO, their eRX. The thing about this group set though is that you can't actually buy it. So this is the kind of second generation, the version 2.0 of this group set, as it were. Now, version 1.0 I used extensively when it first came out a couple of years ago, and actually really liked it, especially for what it kind of represented, a massive leap forward for these Chinese group set manufacturers. Now, there were a couple of teething issues. There were some water ingress problems early on, and the battery compartment needed a redesign as well. But still, I really liked it. So when they sent me this version 2.0, I was genuinely really excited. I've used it on 2 different bikes at this point now, and yeah, I think it's really good. But for whatever reason, they chose not to make this available to the public to buy. But literally this morning, got dropped off today. I've got version 3.0 in a box over there, and this one they're selling. You can buy it as of right now. So today I'm going to pull this version 2 off the bike, then I'll do a comparison of all 3 versions so you can kind of see the evolution, and then I'll get version 3 strapped on here and give it a go. So let's crack on. Right, first things first, I've got to get this group set off of the bike. Now I'm going to reuse all the cables that go to the derailleurs because those haven't changed for all 3 versions of the group set, and the battery in the seat post here is a relatively new one as well, so that won't need replacing either. So yeah, I'm going to replace the derailleurs and the shifters, but firstly got to get these off, so let's go. So getting this group set removed was very straightforward, but controversial move here. Well, I'm going to reuse the olives that went into the back of the shifters, these things here. Ideally, they should be replaced because they get crushed when you do up the retaining nut, and I'm sure I'll get absolutely crucified in the comments for this, but I'm going to reuse them. I've done it before and it's been fine, but fair warning, this isn't the recommended approach. But anyway, now that's done, let's get the group set unboxed. So this is it's definitely not the retail packaging, by the way, but it's how I received it, and yeah, everything was fine. Okay, so this is the new group set, kind of in its entirety really, and it all looks really good, and these shifters especially, they just feel so good in hand. Yeah, and they've clearly made some quite major updates to them, although certain things don't look like they've changed much at all, actually. But let me get all 3 versions out next to each other and the changes will become a little bit clearer. Right then, I've got version 1, version 2, and version 3 out here on the table in front of me. I've also got both different versions of the brake calipers at the back there, and just 1 set of battery and cables because yeah, this is identical between all 3 sets actually. But first things first, let's get them on the scales and see if there's a weight difference between any of these. Right then, version 1, let's get this all on, and we're looking at 1,225 grams for the first version. Right, version 2, 1,146 grams, so a little bit lighter, and version 3, 1,196 grams, so kind of in between the 2. Now, regarding those weights, I had a look at the equivalent Shimano Di2 gear, and the third version, what was it, 1196, it basically sits between 105 and Ultegra, a bit closer towards 105 really, and that's what I see this group set going up against, to be honest with you. Now, value proposition we'll get onto in a minute, but at least weight-wise, pretty competitive. But let's look at the differences between all 3 versions of this group set, and we'll start with the rear derailleurs here, because from what I can see, they're all pretty much the same, at least externally. Now, like I mentioned, they all use the same power cables and power delivery, which makes things a little bit easier. But yeah, I think virtually everything on them, at least all the external parts, are interchangeable, like this arm here, this kind of bracket on top, or even the whole rear derailleur cage really. I'm pretty confident you could swap it between all 3 versions and everything would be interchangeable. Now, the kind of the guts, the whole brains of the operation, from my understanding, for the entire group set actually, sits in the back here of the rear derailleur, inside this plastic shell. And again, from what I can see, everything on the back here looks the same, at least externally. So this aluminium housing is the same, and the shape of this plastic case. Like, they may have included an uprated motor inside this third version. It's very difficult for me to tell. But I mean, the rear derailleur was always good. It was quick, accurate, precise, and pretty durable as well. I mean, on this first version here, you might be able to see there's a massive gash running across the aluminium right there, and that's basically where I took a pretty big spill, came off the bike, slid across the tarmac on the drive side, and yeah, got up and this thing was still trucking, absolutely no problem. So I guess it's a bit of a philosophy of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which makes sense because I never really had a problem with the design of the reed derailleur. It was always pretty good. Apart from one thing they've changed actually. So on the first two versions, you had to charge it via this little magnetic port here. So you kind of clip something on the back that would charge via USB and it would charge up the Groupset. On this version 3 here, you might be able to see that's gone. It's just a kind of plastic cap there. That's because this version charges up via USB-C and that port is on the front derailleur. So let's have a look at those. So here are the 3 front derailleurs, and in many respects, visually, I guess they're the most different between all 3 versions, or they're still pretty much the same, to be honest with you. Now, I do recall moving from version 1 to version 2, there was a noticeable increase in the speed of the shift, which was great because version 2, the speed of shifting in and out of the big ring was rapid. So even if it's the same on version 3, I'll be happy with that, but I'll get it on the bike and test it out soon enough. And if I show you right here, that's where the USB-C charging port is on the front derailleur. Really easily accessible. So that's that's a welcome addition actually, because I mean, like I showed you on the older versions, you had this kind of magnetic cable and it was a proprietary charging cable, right? So if you lost it, you were pretty scuppered. You couldn't charge up your Groupset and you'd have to contact L-TWOO for a new one. And thinking about it, having USB-C just makes it so much easier. Like if you're going bike packing, you can use the same cable to charge a Groupset as you do for your mobile phone. So yeah, in that respect, it does make things a lot easier. Now, there's kind of one other change to the kind of front derailleur over the generations, which I'll quickly show you. So on the first generation here, you can see on the back, there's this little screw, little bolt poking out. It's a little grub screw. And the point of that is called a support bolt, I think is what Shimano calls it in their documentation. And what it's there to do, it's there to add extra support and rigidity to the front derailleur. So you basically have this set, so it's pressing against the front derailleur hanger or part of the frame when you've got this all mounted up. So that when you're shifting, especially when you're shifting under power, it just adds some extra rigidity to the whole front derailleur setup and makes shifts a little bit crisper, especially under power, like I said. The issue with the first iteration of it was that you couldn't access it from the front, right? So basically, in order to get the bolt set properly, you had to kind of attach it onto the bike, check that it was right. If not, undo it again from the hanger, adjust the bolt, screw it in or out again. And yeah, it was a bit of a pain to set up in that regard. Now on the second version, they got rid of it entirely for some reason. So it just doesn't exist on version 2, which was a bit weird. But on version 3, they nailed it, they got it right. So you can see it exists right there. That's the support bolt, but you can access it from the front like you can on most Shimano front derailleurs. So it just makes it a lot easier to install. So that's great to see. And yeah, it just shows that they are thinking about design evolution as they are putting out new versions. So great to see that as well. Okay, so onto the big one here, the shifters. And you can see a little bit more of a gradual evolution in the design on these 3. But let's have a start. Well, let's start with the first version, right? So this right here, as you might be able to see, it's actually got loads of scuff marks in the carbon for the brake lever here, because this is the one I was using when I had that spill that I mentioned. And I had no real issues with this shifter actually. Ergonomically, it was really nice, it was comfortable, but it was quite easy to accidentally shift, to be honest with you, because I would ride like this. So I'd leave my fingers here as I was kind of riding along. And because the buttons, well, they're quite sensitive. So if you went over a bump or hit a divot in the road, it was quite easy to accidentally shift by accident. If you just like your hand moved, you could quite easily press a button and actuate a shift. So I mean, it was great other than that, but yeah, these buttons were a little problematic sometimes, and they tried to address that in the second version. Now with version 2.0, you can see that the top part, the kind of hood of the shifter, is exactly the same between both, which is fine because like I said, this is an ergonomic shifter anyway. I had no real problem with the design in terms of kind of holding it on longer rides. That was fine, but they have tried to address the kind of accidental shift issue because the design of the button has changed quite a lot actually. So let me show you. So basically what they've done is they've added a spring detent to the button. So you need to press it in, then it'll shift, right? Like so. So that meant that I could leave my fingers where they sit naturally on the shifter, and then if I go over any bumps and stuff, it doesn't actuate a shift and you need to kind of press it in, then it kind of registers the click, which is great. But there was a slight issue with this particular shifter that wasn't actually present on the left-hand one. So let me show you. The mechanism was a little bit sticky, so it's fine like that, right? But if I use this button, I press it in, this one gets stuck right there, which meant that basically that particular button was on a bit of a hair trigger, and then it was the same issue that I had with the old style of shifter, because then if I accidentally go over a bump, it would press the button and accidentally shift. Now that wasn't an issue on the left-hand shifter here. I can show you, nice and smooth, no real problems at all. But yeah, for whatever reason, on this one, it would sometimes get a little bit stuck like that, just got gummed up in the mechanism there ever so slightly. But with version 3, they've absolutely nailed it, so let me show you. So the third version here, it just feels like a refinement of the other two for a number of different reasons. The first thing that struck me was, can you see there's a kind of ridge on the top of the brake lever here? And it's kind of present on the other two, but not as much. Can you see it's quite pronounced on this version here? And that means there's a perfect spot for your index finger to go. It just sits really nicely in that little groove there. In addition, they've put this really nice kind of ridging on the rubber here, which grips your hand really nicely. And they've also contoured the hood a little bit more. You can see it's a slightly thicker design than version 2, and it's slightly more rounded on the top there. Essentially, it just feels a lot better in hand. It feels like a much more secure grip. Your hand just naturally sits exactly where it should, which is great. And in addition, I'm pretty confident they've updated the buttons as well. They just feel a little bit clickier, if that kind of makes sense. I'll try and bring it up to the mic. So this is version 2. This is version 3. It might be difficult to hear, but they just feel a little bit more tactile, a little bit nicer. And in addition, I think they've put 2 springs inside the kind of back of the button here. So the return is very quick, very nice. So again, you can leave your fingers here and not worry about accidentally shifting. They just feel nicer. So they've put some work into the buttons as well. So hopefully I've been able to show you between the 3 versions, there have been some clear updates as they've gone on. They've not kind of been sat on their laurels. They've kind of listened to customer feedback and made changes where necessary, really. But regardless, really excited to give this a go. So let's get it stuck on the bike.
So getting it on the bike was incredibly easy. I mean, it was helped immensely by reusing the existing cables and also committing the cardinal sin of reusing those crushed olives. But honestly, L-TWOO have put some real work into the design of the shifter to make things so much easier during install.
Oh, I gotta give L-TWOO some credit. These are so nice to install. I mean, like I may have showed, there's a little indent here so you can get your spanner on this nut while you tighten this one. Makes things so much easier. And yeah, this little like channel that runs down there, that means that basically when you get your Allen key in, it lines up directly with the bolt, the retention bolt in there, and just, yeah, getting these installed so far, an absolute breeze. The easiest set I've ever installed. Right then, all done, all set up, and all indexed. Shifting seems to be working smoothly. So let's get this on the road. Okay, so I've done about 25 miles this afternoon, so nothing crazy, but I mean, yeah, what can I say? It's been fantastic. The shifting is so quick and crisp. Really, really nice. I feel like the shifting at the back is definitely faster than the first and second versions. It's just so snappy. Same with the front. It's as fast, if not a little bit faster than version 2. So yeah, rapid. So very happy with the shifting. I will say there is a little bit of chain rub on the front derailleur on the extremes of the cassette. So when cross chaining, i.e. largest cassette at the back, smallest on the front, and vice versa, there is a little bit of chain rub on the front derailleur. Now I did slap this on relatively quickly this afternoon, so I suspect with a little bit of tuning, a little bit of repositioning of the front derailleur, I should be able to eliminate that. But yeah, I'll definitely keep you posted. But either way, I'm not too fussed because I tend not to cross chain anyway, but I know that is a bit of a deal breaker for some of you, so I will keep you posted on that. Now in terms of ergonomics up the front here on the hoods, really good. Now like I mentioned, these are slightly girthier than the first and second versions, but that's not to their detriment at all. It really adds to the comfort. Your hand just nicely slots into place, so very happy with that. And the buttons as well, really good, nice and clicky, nice and tactile, nice and snappy, so absolutely no issues there either.
Anyway, just gonna have to get some more miles on this group set and report back. So I guess back to Luke in the studio. So a couple of other bits. Firstly, braking power, yeah, really good. So the calipers themselves are unchanged from version 2. They use a kind of lightweight monoblock design for the caliper, which is great. But yeah, braking power, nice and strong, no concerns. Secondly, weatherproofing, right? So the first couple of units off the production line of the first version of this group set, so a couple of years ago at this point, did seem to have some issues on this front. So Joe from China Cycling, he reported that his group set packed up after he was caught in a rainstorm. It did come back to life, but yeah, it seems like water ingress may well have played a part there, and my front derailleur completely died. Again, it was a very early unit, and I did a bit of an autopsy on the group set actually, took it apart and everything, and I could never definitively prove it was water ingress. But I will say, L-TWOO sent me a replacement, and I used that for a couple thousand miles in all weathers, and yeah, no further issues. Same with version 2 actually, so I rode that a lot in the rain, and I washed it very liberally with the high pressure setting on my hose to kind of put it through its paces multiple times. And yeah, no further issues. So it kind of appears like that weatherproofing problem was solved a little while back actually. So I have very high hopes for version 3 here. And finally, cost, right? So in my opinion, this group set is designed to go toe to toe with 105 Di2. The interesting thing about that is that 105 Di2, the cost has dropped quite considerably recently actually. So you can buy the whole group set right now for about 850 quid, and that includes crankset, cassette, chain, and disc rotors. Now, at the moment, you can't actually buy version 3 of this eRX group set on AliExpress. But I'm sure that'll change in a couple of weeks. But as of right now, one of the only places that you can get hold of it is actually Panda Podium, the site that Joe runs. And yeah, it costs 650 bucks or 510 quid on there. Now, I'm not being paid anything to mention Panda Podium, by the way. Well, for one, Joe is an absolute legend, and yeah, his team over there are really wicked as well. So I'll put a link to this group set down there in the description for you if you want to check it out. So it is technically cheaper, but when you factor in having to buy crankset, cassette, chain, and disc rotors on top, it does push the price pretty close to 105 Di2, making it a little bit of a tougher sell, really. I will say it's only just been released, right? So the price is likely to drop, and you can choose between 10, 11, and 12 speed with this group set. That's absolutely not an option with Shimano gear. So there we go, a little bit of an overview of this group set for you. Like I said, I'm keeping it on the bike for the time being, so yeah, I'll put some more miles on it and report back. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, especially considering the price drop of 105 Di2. Yeah, it does make this a little bit more of an interesting topic to discuss. But yeah, subscribe if you like this kind of thing, hit the like button if you enjoyed this episode, and yeah, see you next time. Shut up.
It's the bonus clip time.
So I realized I never actually showed you the kind of speed of the shifting on this thing. So I've taken the chain off, but yeah, check this out. It's absolutely rapid. Yeah, definitely the fastest of all 3 versions. Really, really quick. But let me show you the front. Right, so the front, again, super quick. Yeah, really rapid on the front derailleur. I think a little bit faster than version 2, and definitely a step up from yeah, version 1.0. But yeah, all round shifting on this group set, really rapid on both the front and the back. And yeah, that's it. So see you next time.